Hello and welcome, disruptors. Welcome to another intriguing episode, an enlightening one of Mindset Mastery Moments. Today, we embark on a transformative journey into the realms of healing and empowerment. Yes, we have to have a certain mindset that empowers us to heal from the inside out. Did you know that studies show that 68% of individuals are influenced by their early father-childhood relationships in ways they may not fully realize? Yes, even I too, along my journey, had to uncover layers of my father-daughter relationship and specifically spend time healing and restoring myself in those areas. Today, we will delve into this uncharted territory with our next special guest. She is an extraordinary, true trailblazer in the healing and personal development space, and she is fostering healthy connections all over the world as she speaks to audience in churches, in corporate communities, and in virtual forums. She is someone that I am most proud to bring to you all today so you can heal and be empowered in looking closely into the journey of your mindset when it comes to healing your father-child relationship. Today, my guest is none other than Giji Dennard. Giji, we welcome you to Mindset Mastery Moments, and we're so happy to have you.
I'm so glad to be here, Dr. Alisa. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to our discussion today.
Oh, it's going to be fire. I couldn't wait for this one. I was going over our conversation before and I couldn't wait to get here. But before we dive into this conversation, I have the honor and privilege of telling you a little bit more about Giji. She is in the world of empowerment and healing, and few of the names that shine brightly when we think about how we should really take a closer look into shifting our mindsets and overcoming limiting beliefs about what really happened in our childhood. She is a speaker, an author, consultant, father-child relationship healer, passion for fostering healthy connections as she's sparked by her personal journey of meeting her own father at the age of 17. She became a professional signature for this conversation. With diverse 3-decade career, Giji has explored the intricacies of her human experience from service excellence to leadership development. Yes, they're all interrelated, and that's why we're excited to have her today. She has helped individuals create the identity with cultivating communication mastery and kingdom living. As a state champion winning orator in high school, Giji embarked on the journey as an influential motivational speaker and the only female speaker at the inaugural Father Shift Conference. I said the only female speaker at the Father Shift Conference, yet where all the boys were, they're like, we need you, girl. And she's going to share that little story. I loved hearing about it. She is definitely girl power in it. We're recording this episode on women's empowerment in Women's History Month, just at the weekend of Women's International Day. And so no other better to hear her tell us a little bit about that journey, getting into the crowd where the boys were. She has engaged and inspired audience with captivating narratives, transparency, and empathy. She has a National Merit Scholar with a BA in print journalism from Howard University and a JD from the Stanford Law School. Boy, I tell you, this lady is loaded. You guys better get your chairs and your beverage and sit yourself down because she's going to teach us some lessons. Delving into the themes of healing father-child relationship, personal and professional greatness, and the pursuit of happiness. We do not have to say anymore because everything I just told you is just a little pin drop in who she is, because she's going to unleash her knowledge and empower us to heal from way back in our childhood to now. Giji, welcome again. We're so proud and happy to have you. We're proud of you and we're honored to have you. So Giji, tell us about yourself through your own voice.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I ended up in this space to be a conduit for healing, which really began with my own journey. I met my father for the first time at age 17. And without even understanding what God would do with that void, my own healing journey, meeting my father, going through the layers of things that I had to go through for years, he was healing, I was healing. We had the benefit of actually being able to do it together in some ways. Yeah. But it was more than what it might have looked like. From the outside, you think you get to meet your dad, and if it's all good, it's all good. But there's all this stuff that's been growing in you, over this time. So the hole was a lot bigger than I realized that it was. Even when I met him, I had just kind of begun dating. And so that void had created a need for affirmation and affection that I had not gotten from a father, which in my case ended up propelling me into relationships with men far too old. I was dating men that were 7 to 14 years my senior as a teenager.
Wow.
And at the time, I didn't really understand that's what was going on.
Hey.
It was really only in hindsight, after meeting my dad, and also just kind of after realizing that there was still some pain associated with having missed him all those years.
Wow. Yeah.
Mine was sort of a story that is not, I think, the most common that I run into, in which case my father did not leave us. My mother left my dad and forbade him to have any contact with me. So my dad actually wanted to find me and was not permitted to. So I had a lot of anger toward my mom. I had a lot of anger toward God for allowing that to happen. Yeah. And I think with my dad, it was just more such a sense of loss. It turned out that personality-wise, I am way more like my father. So growing up, I felt very much a misfit in my home. I looked like my mother.
Identify.
Yeah, I looked like my mother, but I was so not like my mother that it just felt like, you've got to be kidding me. Whose child am I really? This can't be the case. So
I'm sorry about laughing, but that is so funny. Like
it was, yeah. I had a whole story.
Oh my goodness.
I created a whole story. And so this kind of goes to this mindset thing. We will do things to try to master our mindset. We will create things to try to make us feel okay with who we see ourselves as and the circumstances under which we're living, right? Absolutely. So that did not make sense to me. So I created a story that made more sense. So my mother's youngest sister and I were very close. She and I also look quite a bit alike. So my rationale was, she had me out of wedlock and they gave me to the other sister who was getting married. I made up the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? It was just
like, I'm going to make this make sense.
Make sense.
I'm going to make this make sense.
Yeah. Because I was a lot more like her. So I was like, okay, see, that I could maybe believe,
Nothing else adds up.
Nothing else added up.
I hope the viewers are leaning in, because literally we do this.
Yes,
at a very early age. Yes. And we don't even realize that there's just so much, the term fake news that we get.
Yes. Yeah.
And we believe it.
We do.
We
believe
by that. And those are those limiting beliefs that we create. So, I love this. Keep going, girl.
And often then we have messed up memories because our memories are infused by these things we've created for ourselves, right? Jeez. So when I met my dad, it all started falling into place. I mean, right away. One of the things I discovered is that we wrote just alike. I mean, he brought something with him and I read it and it freaked me out because I was like, I could have written this. It could have been my writing kind of thing. He was also an orator, and we were both chess aficionados. So the first night we met, we stayed up and played chess till 4:30 in the morning. There were just all these little pieces that were so much more personality wise like him, and I like jazz. the most. My mom was more into spirituals. So it was kind of like all these pieces of myself that I had not been able to identify with anyone.
Right.
Just like was like, wow, this makes so much sense. Even my younger brother, a few years ago, we were hanging out and he was discovering some of the things because he didn't really know the history. Right. And as he was discovering it, I was talking about different kinds of things that I had in common with our dad. He was like, wow, you have so much in common with him. You're so much like him.
So my question for you, just for our audience who might be tracking us, you had never met him before because
I had never met him before.
Since childhood, birth.
Since 6 months old. Of course, I don't have
6 months old, so you don't remember, because that's important for us to track with you. Yeah. Because now you said you missed him, and because of your longing for your dad, because you are a part of your father and your mother. Correct. I hope everyone's listening. So when you don't like your mother, you don't like part of yourself. Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
And so you're telling us it's possible to miss someone we've never had.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Please tell us a little bit about that.
So even when I was a little girl, so one of the things, I don't really know how to rationally explain it. I can only tell you that it was true. I was a daddy's girl with no daddy around, and I knew it. Like I knew my name. So I remember in elementary school, on a bad day, I'm having a tough time emotionally or whatever, I would doodle my father's last name like all over my stuff. I wasn't using his last name. I was using my mother's maiden name. I have an older brother that is not my father's child. And I think she wanted to just keep it tight and everybody using the same name when I went to school. Right. And so she got my social security card in her maiden last name. But my birth certificate has my dad's name on it. And I knew that name. Right. So I would like doodle his name. I would daydream about him all the time. And I was fully persuaded that my father would rescue me if anything ever happened. I mean, I knew it. Even though I didn't know him, I was fully persuaded of that.
Now, do you think that was provoked by the longing that he may have had to connect with you as well?
I think that is possible. And seeing this, after the fact, absolutely. Because he definitely had an equal longing. In fact, he tried to find us. So my family tree is more like a vine. It gets a little interesting, maybe hard to track. I'll try. So my mother's middle sister was married to my father's first cousin. Somebody he actually grew up in the same household with. My dad and this first cousin. So my uncle / cousin, second cousin, always knew where I was. And my dad would try to get the information out of him. But my mother had a very, very strong domineering personality, and nobody wanted to deal with that.
Yeah.
So he was like, dude, I'm sorry, but I'm not in it. So yes, I was aware. And even after I met my dad and I went to his house for the first time, he had actually been collecting information on me, like trying to find me. I had been in a couple of newspaper articles. Somehow they had made its way to them. I hadn't sent them, but somebody had. I don't even know. Right. But so he had been trying to track me. Right.
So it was you tracking him that you were able to. You guys were
correct. Okay. Yeah. What happened was when I was 16, and I think, maybe at the beginning of my senior year, the end of my junior year, I asked my mother if I could invite him to my high school graduation. I'd kind of been gearing up for that for months, like bracing myself for
her response. Yeah.
She might have. And it was it wasn't enthusiastic, but it wasn't a no.
It wasn't. Okay.
She said, I don't care if you can find him. So I was like, worked for me, because the other thing that had been happening. So this same aunt that was the middle girl, several years before that. Okay. So this is going to freak a few people out. Warning. This is one of those freaky moments in my life. So I was hanging out at this aunt's house because her son and I were very close. He's a year and a half younger than I, and he and I are first cousins, and we were very, very tight.
Right.
more like my little brother. And so we're hanging out. I was hanging out at her house, and just randomly I said, I always wanted a brother named Ricky and a brother named Mickey. Just like, boom, I was 14. And her face just went like blanched. I was like, what did I say?
Right.
And then it changed. And it was that, you know what, I don't care, look. And she said, well, you do have a brother named Ricky and you have a sister named Mickey.
And these weren't the ones you were growing up with.
Oh, no, not at all. Never knew anything about these kids. No, they're older. Never. They were from his first marriage. Didn't know anything about them at all. Like nothing.
Now you just told me some astro. My those who know me know that Dr. Alisa is probably trying to find some cosmic reason for this.
Yeah, I call it a word of knowledge because I didn't know anything about my dad's first marriage, like nothing.
The thing is, I believe we do know things. I feel like because we are created in God's image and likeness, we know things. We just don't tap into it. But your desire was so strong that it was
that
revealed
could be.
to you.
That could be how it got there. But so I do believe it was a word of knowledge. And so it was very, but of course it freaked her out. But she also decided that day to start having me have these secret conversations with my father's father, my paternal grandfather, Daddy Ed.
Oh.
So whenever I would visit her between the ages of 14 and 17,
you started connecting.
I would talking with Daddy Ed on the phone.
Yeah.
And so when the issue came up about inviting my dad to the graduation, what I did was I sent my father's invitation to my grandfather, hoping that he would forward it to my dad wherever he was. Because I still didn't know where my father was at that point.
Yeah.
And I found out later that they weren't talking, but he did it anyway.
Oh, good. Because I think he knows he feels like you deserve that because you had been connecting and building a relationship
with him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he was giving you a solid, not his.
Right. Yeah.
He's not his son because they haven't even their father-child relationship.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
But that's how that all wound up. And then he actually got the invitation the night before my graduation. I was in Fort Lauderdale. He had just left Miami and had no idea we'd only been an hour apart. He was doing a speaking engagement in Miami, had gotten back home to Georgia and found the invitation.
Wow.
So he couldn't come back the next day.
Right.
I totally understood.
Right.
But he did come 2 months later in July.
And that's when you guys spent.
May, and that was when we met for the first time. Yeah.
My goodness. Yeah. What a journey. That is a whirlwind. I feel like a lot of us, you were conscious of your desire to connect with your dad.
Yes.
But do you, in your journey and in your work, do you find that a lot of your clients and individuals you work with, they are ignorant to the fact of that desire and that longing for their father, or they're trying to erase it? Maybe
I think often they're trying to suppress it or erase it. I do not believe that there's anybody on the planet who actually doesn't want that relationship with their parents.
Come on.
I just don't believe that that's true. Now, I believe that some people have been hurt out of it.
Yeah.
I believe that some people have been talked out of it. In the case, for instance, of my older siblings, I will say about my mother, she never said anything negative about my father. Mm-hmm. So that didn't color my perception.
Which was great.
Mm-hmm. My older siblings, not so much. So their mother said a lot of negative stuff about my dad, which created, even as his life changed, it didn't make them open. The younger of the olders didn't make them open to hear and heal and mend. The older kids had a bit of their own memories.
Right.
And so they kind of could juxtapose their own memories against what mom was saying.
Right.
Their mother was saying, but the younger kids really didn't have their own memories. My dad and his first wife got married when they were really young, like 18, 19.
Right.
And then after all of that and 5 kids later, he was actually in jail. So
Oh,
they didn't grow up with him.
right,
The
right.
kids didn't grow up with him at all.
So they did not know him.
So they didn't know. So their mother's input was really what they knew, right?
Right.
So that made it really hard for them to go through a healing process, actually.
It does.
And so there's that. So sometimes you have people that just want to avoid it altogether because it's bad memories. I have a brother I have never met because of that.
Because of that.
So, yeah.
Feeling.
So it was just like, it was cut off by his mom, and he felt like to honor his mom, he should just never interface with us. And even though he went to school with some of them, I didn't grow up with that older set there in Delaware, but he did. He grew up in the same high school and all that kind of stuff with them.
But he just kept his distance.
Totally kept his distance. So I think those are different things that happen, right, in the dynamic.
Yes.
I think sometimes people just out of hurt,
yes,
kind of bury the desire. They kind of treat it like whatever. Yeah, I know, whatever.
Right.
And it's not really whatever.
Right.
It's absolutely affecting them, whether they choose to accept it or not.
Yes.
And that's the part that I'm trying to help people understand, that it's an intrinsic sort of desire about it to which we respond.
Yeah.
Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, etc.
Okay.
And then make other decisions based on that feeling and response.
Ooh. Ooh. We make decisions based on those feelings and response. Subconsciously and consciously.
Correct.
Oh, that's it right there.
Whether it's subconscious and you're looking for something, like me, looking for love in all the wrong places.
Right.
Whether it's conscious, you meet somebody, let's say. He reminds you of your dad. You don't have pleasant memories of your dad. You immediately cut that person off and you're like, I don't know you. I don't want to know you, and don't ever talk to me again.
Right.
You know,
but that's part of you is breaking as well.
Yeah, but it's you think you're protecting yourself, but you're not really, because you're just covering stuff up. So that's the other thing. I think people sometimes think they're okay because they've done such a good cover-up job. Yes. But underneath that is all this scar tissue and all these wounds that really haven't healed.
Ooh.
And so you're carrying that around with you.
Yes.
You know, it's literally like being diseased and not knowing it, and you're carrying that into every other relationship.
I agree. Oh, I can see that. Ooh, we just got through that first episode. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors with our special guest to help us heal. We're going to talk about finding peace and forgiveness. We'll be right back. We are back with our phenomenal guest, Miss Giji Dennard. And she opened up a worm of emotions, even for me. And I know that our listeners and viewers, Giji, are definitely tuned in. And so you went through what most would call this sort of a emotional roller coaster, even to the point when you're sitting at 17 and sitting there with your dad playing chess till 4 and later, early in the morning. Walking away from that experience, I can only imagine that you would have this finally, but oh my gosh, why was I kept from this? And why didn't he look a little bit harder for me? And whatever, all these questions that I'm making up in my head, just following along your journey to that 17 years. But at some point you had to find your spot and your peace with whatever had happened in order to move forward, which leads into the forgiveness factor, right? Because you would have felt angry, you would have had resentment, you would have probably developed some level of unforgiveness for both parents and maybe even the adults in your journey, because anybody could have changed that for you at any point to where you can look at someone and say, yeah, that I belong here. I look like my mom, but everything about me is my dad. And now it makes sense. I am a whole person, right? So tell us, Giji, what did that whole journey of finding peace and uncovering forgiveness look like for you?
Well, it definitely was a journey. It was not something that happened immediately.
I can imagine.
Now, because I was aware that my mother had left my dad, I really didn't have anger towards my father. There was a lot of sadness, and a lot of sense of being robbed. Like you're saying, you know, of getting all this stuff from him all those years and not just now, right?
Right.
So there was a sense of being robbed. But he himself, you know, confessed that he had tried to get to me through various people in my family, right?
Right.
And I know my mom. So my mother's note was no joke. You know, she was tough and she was determined, and pretty much what she said went. So I understood everybody's kind of like, yep, not getting in that. Sorry, love you, not getting in that. So I wasn't really upset with them. I was certainly very grateful when my aunt decided to just break that first barrier and let me start talking to my grandfather. So I considered that a tremendous blessing. And since we just kept it in-house, you know, there was no risk of anybody getting in trouble. But I mean, I had seen my mother respond to things, you know, like that summer before that, I wanted to get my ears pierced.
Okay.
My mother, there were 5 girls. My mother was the only one who did not want to get her ears pierced. She thought it was barbaric. So she didn't want me to get mine pierced either.
Okay.
But I went home for the summer, went out with her oldest sister, and I picked her oldest sister because she was the closest to my mom. So I figured, okay, even if she gets mad, she's not going to be mad at her for a long time because they're really close. So I had her take me out to the mall to get my ears pierced. So when my mom came to pick me up at the end of the summer, hey, what could she do? They're pierced, right?
Exactly.
So, but I watched her reaction. You know, she was definitely not a happy camper. But I knew that my aunt would negotiate, you know, my oldest aunt would negotiate that on my behalf, kind of thing.
Right.
But that wasn't always the case. And so, you know, she and the aunt that I was closest to, they actually had kind of a lot of fights over me. So I was aware of the tensions and tried to not do anything that would produce that, right? To like produce that kind of tension.
Yes.
So it really was a few years after meeting my dad, because I honestly thought once I met my father and our relationship was going so well, I too was deceived into thinking I was okay.
Right.
I honestly thought like, okay, the mystery's been solved. We're together now. We're having a great time when we see each other. We can pick up the phone and call each other anytime. We can talk about anything. Right. I'm loving this relationship. And yet, so I went home might have been like when I was 19, 20. I went home for the holidays and my mom and I got into this argument, and she said that I had been seeming like agitated. Like what was wrong with me? I was like, I don't know.
Subconsciously something's going on, but you can't, it's right? Not coming in the conscious.
Right. But it was interesting that she brought up something. She said, is it because you don't get to see your father as often as you like? Now, when she said it, I was like, that could be. Like I had not thought that, you know, consciously. Yeah. But when she said it, that kind of bore witness, like that could be part of the problem. You know, because I wasn't seeing him all the time. At this point, I'm in college. I'm in DC.
Yeah.
He lives in Georgia.
Okay.
So no, I'm not seeing him frequently.
No. There
was one point at which I can't remember what year that was, where we spent time together and he drove back up to DC with me. So that was cool. I had to fight. I do remember being angry. I was 25, so healing hadn't totally happened by then. I was 25 and I decided I wanted to spend Christmas with my father. Now, I had never spent Christmas with my father.
Right.
I always
25 now.
Right. And now I'm 25. And it occurred to me that even though I met him 8 years ago, I've still never spent Christmas with my dad.
Right.
And I wanted to go spend Christmas with my father. And when I told my mom, she flipped out.
No, don't mess up mommy's Christmas. That's one thing I learned.
But I was like, I'm sorry, but you all need to get over it. All of you. I told the whole family, I said, I have never, ever in all my life spent Christmas with my father, and I am going to this year. Right. I will see you all at New Year's.
Right.
You all have been with me every year of my life. Get over it.
Exactly. Nothing is going to break.
Exactly.
Nothing is going to break.
Nothing is going to happen between now and when I see you. Okay. So I did. So I went and spent my one and only Christmas with my father. And he was also, at that point, he'd had some severe kidney issues. He was on dialysis. And so I even was like up with him at 4:00 in the morning to go to the hospital with him. It was very cool. I had wanted it to snow. He did not. But when we walked out to go to the van, it had started snowing. I was like, yes. So not only did I get my dad, I got a white Christmas with my dad in Georgia.
Ah, that's perfect.
It was perfect, right? And so I didn't mind getting up and going to the hospital with him because I was like, all of these moments are precious. They just come too few and far between.
Yes. Right.
So yeah, so that was, but I do remember being really angry. And like, to me, it didn't make sense that they didn't understand that.
Right.
It's like, you guys have got to be kidding me.
Because they're thinking, my thought is, you have lived so long without him. What is this urgent desire to be with him? I'm thinking that's what
that may have been thinking
might be. And so if they're not in your shoes and you're not correct. The one who was literally thinking your aunt's probably your mother because you just don't make sense to anyone.
Exactly.
I mean, like that's so much. It's very, and it happens in so many of our lives, even when it's not concerning that. Right. Sometimes it's about the career you choose, and no one understands why it's so important for me to be a truck driver.
Right.
They're like, but you're so pretty and so smart. And I'm not a truck driver, I'm making it up. But they'll have all these reasons for why you being in corporate America is the best thing for you once they get there. Because they made stories up since you were a kid.
Right,
you were
exactly.
Just cute enough. You were all this, and she's gonna be that, and now you're like, nope, gonna be a truck driver. Right. Now you just shattered their dream. Right. But all this time they were suppressing you with their dream. Right. And that is the imposing of emotions that we do in especially familiar relationships.
Yes, we do.
I believe.
I
that is the hardest thing to forgive sometimes, because now you have to forgive the absent, the taking, the pulling, and the dragging. But now you're trying to, literally, I would say you're just trying to survive.
Exactly.
Your feelings, your emotion, and you can't have those. Those are not yours either. So how did you model through that? Like,
so I mean, I went ahead and I went home, I went to my dad's house and just said, you know what, people, I will see you at New Year's. And I just kind of cut off all conversation at that point. I'm like, whatever. And nobody's getting me a present that's going to die by New Year's Day. Seriously, I will see you all in New Year's. And, but it did, I think, sort of raise, sometimes we have suppressed resentments.
Yes.
And I think that did sort of raise some resentments to the surface that turned out to be a good thing later on. Yeah. So fast forward a couple more years, I'm out of grad school now, and my assistant pastor at the time, our pastor's wife, had a lot in common with my mom. Mm-hmm. So there were these triggers that would happen. She and I would be riding along, talking, listening to music, everything's good. And then she'd say something. She'd say something that was one of those things that my mom used to say that I didn't like, kind of things. Uh-huh. And I would kind of shut down. Now, I knew that she didn't understand what was going on. Yeah. But at the time, I really couldn't explain it. Mm. But because I was in lay leadership within my church, I was like, okay, I need to be in sync with my leadership. Yeah. So I asked her, I said, can we just talk? Because I think there's probably something you need to know. And, maybe you can help us both through all of this. So I went to her really with that. She kind of laughed and she said, my husband gets this a lot from guys who've had issues with their father. She goes, but I don't see this too often. I said, yep, it would be me. I said, so I told her, I wasn't close to my mom. She was super close to her mom. I was like, I was not close to my mom. There's a lot of stuff. I don't think you mean anything by it, but it triggers this thing in me. And then I'm hurt and mad. And I don't know how to respond to you because I'm just reliving this past hurt all over again in the middle of it. And Shannon and I ended up just talking. She just kind of had me just talk, free fall, just stream of consciousness, whatever came to mind, talk. So we hit a certain point. This is like hours. Like we talked for hours.
Yes.
We hit a certain point. She goes, okay, I'm going to start praying over you. She goes, I think there's some things you probably need to renounce. She goes, and I'm not sure that they're going to make sense to you or me. She goes, but whatever comes up, just say it. Just say it out loud.
That's
whatever
good.
Comes up, just say it. So she started praying over me and stuff, and I started crying. And what came out was that I was angry still with my mother for not having let me grow up with my dad. And I was angry with God for letting it happen.
Yes.
And once all of that came out and I cried a river, like maybe an ocean, I was crying so hard, I literally thought I might have a heart attack.
Oh my gosh.
That intense.
Oh my gosh. Hyperventilating and all.
Yes.
That's it. I call it the brutal, ugly cry.
Yeah. The brutal, ugly cry. And so she had her arms around me and I was rocking at first. I rocked so hard that we both landed on the floor. That's how bad it was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
you kind of body slammed her.
Yeah.
With emotion. Not in a bad way, but with emotion.
Exactly. And so, but hey, the dawn came up. By dawn came, we literally saw the sunrise that night and I was freed.
Yes.
And it changed my dynamic with my mom.
Yeah.
It really did. It really did a lot for me.
Right. That's a releasing moment.
Get that kind of release. So around the issues with my dad, I think that was sort of like a culminating piece of freedom. There were some other things that I still had to deal with my mom that didn't have to do with my dad.
Right.
And those came off in layers later. But around my dad, I think that was sort of like the peak of everything. And then I was really at peace around the past. Right. Where it was like what happened, even sometimes when I would talk to my father, because at the beginning it was hard for him. I'm now like 17. Yeah. He never had a chance
and
to do
he had the longing too. Yeah. And
he had the longing too.
Yeah.
So at the beginning we'd have like these kind of head bumps where I'd be like, okay, look, I'm not 7. He would say certain things,
Like he wants to be
like,
daddy
hold
now.
up. Yes. So he was back in that mode and he would apologize and he would say, okay, I know, I'm sorry. I just missed the fact that I never got a chance.
Right. And are you his only girl? Were you his only girl?
No, but I am the youngest girl.
Ah, gotcha. Which he would have been wiser at the time of your birth.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm the youngest girl, and of the girls, I was the one who really had the relationship with him.
Right.
His other relationships were really with the boys.
Okay.
There was a lot of friction with him and the older girls. So, yeah. So, I mean, I understood it at some level. Yeah. It did cause other layers of issues with my siblings.
Okay.
My relationship with him, when I went to the house, one of the things I discovered, my dad had 3 sets of kids, right? I'm the only child of both my parents.
Oh.
And right. So,
oh my gosh, that explains a lot of the loneliness and longing.
Oh yeah, all of that, right? And so, when I went to his house, he had a picture of everybody.
Oh,
but of me, he had more than a picture. Like he had a little shrine, pictures, articles. Like I was like, and you wonder why they don't like me? Yeah,
you set me up for this.
Yeah, I was like, what in the world? Are you kidding me?
Well, now is that going to tell us a little bit about how he felt about your mother?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, okay. So we won't even go there.
We're not, because that's their business. We're not
gonna go there.
But I just wanted to see, because
very much.
I feel like there's a psychology.
Say there is a psychology which I have discovered and have helped some people through.
Yes.
How, especially men who have children with many women,
Yes.
their relationships with those children are very much influenced by their relationship with that mother.
I agree.
Very much.
It's why I brought it up.
Very much.
That would be a wound that some children would have to heal, because now you have the sibling rivalry. You don't know why, but it's that created in the dynamic of how they parented the father and the mother.
Yes.
Everything about that.
Very much
Thank you.
So I could see that very much as I met my sibling groups. So I have two younger brothers. Well, had two younger brothers. My younger brother died last year suddenly, but of my two younger brothers and my older siblings, my father's relationship with their mothers was extremely different than my father's relationship with my mom.
Right.
When he was married to them, the marriages were very different. So yes, it was very much a reflection of that. Which I understood that better later than I did at 17 to 19. Of
course, exactly.
But yeah, I was just like, oh my God, okay, this explains a lot. But the same thing happened with my grandfather, the one Daddy Ed. I went through a period where my siblings stopped talking to me except my oldest brother, and I was trying to figure out, like, what's the deal? I have not done anything to you people.
Your daddy's
what in the world? But what I found out, I finally got out of my sister. I knew she knew. She's like the glue in the family. Everybody tells her everything. So I finally was like, look, I know you know. So you need to tell me what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
And she said it was because they're saying that Daddy Ed talks about you all the time. And I'm like, okay, like that's my fault. You know, like
I invest into building and nurturing this relationship.
And that was a big difference, which it took me a long time to understand that whole piece.
Yeah.
So they were with him all the time. So I assumed
they had
they had close relationships. Yes.
Not necessarily.
I discovered that it was more he had money and they knew how to get it from him kind of thing. So here's the new granddaughter who doesn't know him. So I'm very much into the relationship.
Right. Because that's what you long for.
That's what I longed for.
Yeah.
Right. And it messed up everybody. It messed up everybody's paradigm. Even his wife. At that point, my grandparents were, separated, had been for years. Yeah. But his wife didn't get it and didn't like it either, because suddenly he was doing things that he had never done before.
For anybody, probably not even his own children.
Could be. So I think the straw that broke the camel's back was when he took me to the mall. So how crazy to me, that's just like really crazy. He's my grandfather. He took me to the mall. Why would anybody lose their mind over that? Well, apparently because he had never done that for anyone.
Yeah.
And why you all of a sudden? And part of it was because I insisted. He kept trying to give me money to go shopping. I said, I don't want the money. I want you to take me.
Right. You want
I want to hang out with you.
Shopping with a person, an older man that you have DNA with, and that you didn't have to do anything or be anything.
Right. Yeah.
To have his companionship.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you would have shared earlier that you went through a couple of dating older people and you had no business, but you were doing that because you had this void, not because you even wanted to be with them necessarily.
Right.
So you were fixing that and healing that in yourself.
Trying to fix that. And so he ended up, going along with me eventually and taking me shopping. And I didn't know until afterwards that went through like the grapevine, like nobody's business. Everybody freaked out. I was like, you have got to be kidding me.
Right, because your family that you grew up with was mad at you because you were busy with this new family, and now the new family didn't like having you around because you were getting all these privileges. Okay, way to become the most hated person in both family trees.
Exactly. So there was, there's all of that you're dealing with in going through this process, right?
Yeah.
Now it's all good. I have a decent relationship with both sets of siblings, kind of thing.
Right.
It's taken something for that to happen. Actually, one of the sisters I got closer to after our father died, don't really understand all of that, but that's what happened. So I just take it. I was like, okay, I don't know what all that was about. But I also, something that you mentioned earlier about being lonely, I didn't realize how alone I felt in this whole family dynamic until my father's funeral.
Oh, tell us about that.
Because I'm the only one with no other siblings in my unit. So at the funeral, all the other siblings were with their group. Right?
Wow.
My mom came, which was a blessing. I wasn't sure if she was coming, but she did come. But she wouldn't sit with me because she said she felt that would be disrespectful. And I was trying to explain, but I feel like so alone because everybody else has got somebody else.
Yeah.
So it was a very strange dynamic.
That came
Something I didn't know that I would feel.
Right.
Until I was there.
I love that you're sharing this because healing our friends, disruptors, viewers, and listeners is a journey. And until it's almost like having hit your elbow or scratching yourself somewhere and then you didn't know and then you just brush it against a desk or something and then, ow, what was that?
Exactly.
And so I talk about these owies in all of our healing processes because even when you've gone through breakup or a heartbreak, I talk to people about, well, you sit and heal, after a breakup. You sit and heal. You take time out just to be with yourself and reconnect with who you are and what your true values and beliefs after coming out with that. But the healing continues.
That's
so get people around you who are good for your nervous system. And if it's that relationship, if it's a romantic relationship, only welcome people who will journey that with you because they are guaranteed to push your owies. And you're going to scream and yell and them taking off wouldn't help you.
Right, correct.
They have to be like, okay, you got an owie. You got to work on it. How can I support you? Not try to fix it for you. So now you came up with an owie.
Exactly.
After
and I just didn't know.
Years.
Right. 17 years later.
Wow.
So I met my father at 17. We had 17 years together. So this is 17 years later.
He's gone.
And I did not anticipate feeling that. I was actually at a lot of peace when he died. I think it's because God gave me a heads up.
Okay.
So
you know it was coming.
Yeah. So I wasn't even like super distraught when he passed, but at the funeral, that sense, that awareness of like, wow, you're the only kid of his that is by him or herself. That was like, it felt so uncomfortable for a while. And then the script kind of flipped afterwards because at the end, when we went up for the repass, I had been really worried about how my mother and the current wife would interact. And she came over to the first wife, with whom I had a great rapport. I always had a great rapport from the day we met. We had a great rapport. She invited me and my mother to sit with her and one of her daughters. Now that threw me for a loop. I was like, okay, sure. All right. A little surprised, but okay, we can do that. So we did. So that was pleasant.
That was.
But then the current wife, that was a whole different issue. I think she was the one who felt the brunt of my mother. I'll put it that way. And, but she came over. My mother stood up and she hugged my mother. And I'm standing there going like, who are you and where did my mother go? You know, kind of thing. And so after she left the table and my mom sat down, I was like, what was that? It was like, she said, oh, she was just thanking me for the gift I sent her. I said, you did what?
You sent her a gift.
She had sent her a gift.
Wow. And
I was like, who are you and what have you done with my mother? I mean, I just did not see that coming like at all in a million years. Not in a million years, but clearly there was other healing that was going on outside of my own healing in all of this.
Yes.
So that was a good thing. And I wasn't mad at her. I was just stunned, you know. And so you know, that helped ease some of the earlier tensions. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And then you know, so I was blessed with one of the things that my dad and I did, and with this kind of gets to one of the ways that we kind of dealt with finding peace and forgiveness in our own journeys together, was by sharing our story together.
Okay.
That's how the book began. It really began with just, we weren't writing a book. We were just sharing our story. And because of our writing styles being so similar, I thought it would just be cool. Like, hey, you write your part, I write my part, and I put it together, and that'll be cool and fun and something we did together.
Yeah. Wow.
That's all I really thought that was going to be. But
oh, wow. Forgiveness. So forgiveness is the theme of this segment, is just understanding that forgiveness is a journey.
It is
and
a
you
journey.
have to be open to when it comes up.
Yes.
To look deeper, pause if you need to, and work through it with diligence.
Yeah.
And I heard what I heard in your share is be gentle to yourself and question the thoughts you think about.
Yeah. That's true.
Question the thought you think about. We'll be right back as we dive into the 3 R's of healing with Gigi after a word from our sponsors. Hey, it's Dr. Lisa. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 1 of my beautiful episode with Giji Dennard, where we talked about unveiling the tapestry of healing. I hope that you stay tuned, and coming right up is episode 2. Don't you just sit there and listen to all this goodness by yourself. Let's unveil the tapestry of healing together. Share this with someone, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mindset Mastery Moments with yours truly, Dr. Lisa. We can't wait to see you again. Bye.